Hey.
Okay, so I can just see you. I can't see anybody else joining yet. Can you? You're on mute, Lizzie.
We have 8 attendees at the minute.
Okay, I can't see them at the minute.
See Adam and Jason there.
Okay, and you can't let them in. I can't see them at the minute. Right now I can. Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Hi everybody.
Hey. Hello.
Hey Adam. Hi Jason. You're on mute at the minute, Adam.
Am I?
Now you're not.
Hey guys.
Hello.
All right. Technology is working.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A couple more minutes, a little bit early. So the webinar has kicked off. So I think everybody can hear you as well. But we'll officially kick off at 4 o'clock. We'll just wait for Patrick and Eloise to join us. Patrick's here. Brilliant. Let me get him on. Hi, Patrick.
Hey guys, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
We'll just wait a couple of minutes. Thanks for joining. Get Eloise on board, and then we'll get going just after 4 UK time.
Sounds like a cold beer being poured out.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that same thing when you said that, Adam.
It sounds quite good to me. I'm here with a coffee and.
Well, you guys are a lot closer to happy hour than I am here. So, yeah, I got some catching up to do.
Gin and tonic, maybe. I need a slice in here. It's Thursday night after all, you know. And Eloise has just arrived as well, so just moving into the panel. Hi, Eloise.
Hello.
All right.
Hello.
The computer upside down there, I think. That's my shot.
There we go.
Perfect. Perfect. Great stuff. We're all here as a panel, but we'll just give it a couple more minutes for a few people to sign in. So just bear with us. Apparently, a few of us, Eloise, have started on the gin and tonics and beers, but I guess it's a little bit too early for you for that.
Only by an hour or two.
There you go.
Yeah,
Adam, he must be talking about you, Adam.
No, I've been on a holiday for a month, so I have had my fill of gin and tonic, and it's January. It's time to get healthy, to box and all of that good stuff, isn't it? Not laughing, Joe.
That's a good point. Yes,
Not during the as long as there's a pandemic, you're not required to do that. That is purely optional.
And then Adam, I mean, if you've had a month of G&Ts, you're going to go dry all the way through the summer.
Well, I was in America, so I switched off from the gin and tonic because you've got to go local, and I went for the old fashions. So
nice. Do some Bloody Marys in the morning to get your day off on a good start.
No, not quite that professional yet.
Patiently wait a couple more minutes. Still people coming in at the minute.
It's the nature of the time, isn't it? We're working from home, working from Teams, working from Zoom.
Yeah.
It's always that couple of minutes late. Trying to hang up from one call with everybody saying just one more thing, just one more thing.
Absolutely. Still ticking up slowly. Okay, I'm going to make a start because we've got quite a bit to go through. So welcome everybody to this 2022 predictions and purpose session that we're going to be running over the next hour or so. We've been lucky enough to speak to a number of the ProcureTech 100 pioneers that was selected last year, and they've come forth with literally tens of predictions for the next year, and to a degree to beyond as well. And what we wanted to do was to share them with you, but also share them in a way that allows us to kind of all view them, share our opinion on them, and also basically maybe apply a little bit of a filter to the ones that we think will really stick during 2022. Hence the word purpose, and hence the word priorities. What makes real purpose? What are the real priorities for 2022? I'm lucky enough to be joined by four great procurement professionals in different capacities, very different capacities. From Patrick from Roche, Jason from Axel KKR, Adam BT Sourced, and Eloise from Carney. And they're going to kind of guide us through and maybe pick out those predictions that are the ones that are going to knock us out the park versus those that maybe are going to take a little bit longer to mature as well. But welcome, guys. It's a great privilege to have you here, and I'm excited about the discussion that we're going to have in the next hour or so as well. So with that, let's get stuck in here. So first of all, as I said, we're going to cover the predictions. There are a lot of them, so don't worry too much. What we're going to do is we've boiled them down into 4 key themes. But then on top of that, over the next couple of days and week, we'll be sharing them online. So you'll see not only the summary, but also the detail that sits behind them, because there's quite a lot of thought gone into these predictions from the ProcureTech 100. They've described what the prediction is, but in most instances why, backed up with facts and stats and information that explains that as well. So yes, take the time to enjoy the next hour, but also take the time to read those in a bit more detail and understand how they apply to your business and how they apply to your organization. So we'll go through those predictions over the bulk of the session, split into 4 different themes. And then we'll come back and talk about them all in the round and basically look to understand what are those real things that really matter for us as well. Now, as I mentioned as well, what we want to be able to do is make the session interactive as well. And to do that, we're basically going to ask you for your opinion as well. So you've got 2 ways of doing this. If you've got 2 screens or 3 screens, then you can click on the link or enter the link and open that up. If you've got a mobile phone, to resist the temptation of doing something else with it, then click on the QR code here or enter the code. And what will pop up in front of you, and the link is in there in the chat bar as well. Thanks for that, Lizzie. You'll be able to basically see the different predictions as they roll up. Now, each one of the panelists have said they'll take a lead on one of the individual areas. And what we'll do is we'll go through each one, and I'll act as a prompt. And as we go through digitalization to start off with, as an example, Adam's going to take a lead on that. You'll see the predictions in front of you. We'll talk about them for about 5, maybe 6, 7, 8 minutes, depending on how vigorous the debate is. And then you then should go on and vote. Vote for your top 3. And then what we do is once we get to the end, we'll basically take a look at where you decided that the key predictions were across the board as well. So with 85 people on board so far, that should be quite a good and informative way of finding out which predictions matter in your view as well. So remember, click on the link, click on the QR code, maybe basically, and we'll throw this up a little bit later as well as a reminder as well. So with that, let's dive into the first area, which is digitalization. And Adam, always one to kind of stand up for a gin and tonic, and maybe fall down for predictions. But
it's January. Yeah. But I have diligently dialed up, and I was about to start voting, but I shall hold off until I've heard what I have to say and then make my decision.
Yeah, so, brilliant.
But that is, when I first saw this, when you first shared it with us, Lance, I thought, it's absolutely bang on. And what's more interesting is just how interrelated each of these are, and how one leads to the next, and how one can inform and cause and improve on each of the others. So I was looking at this and I was thinking, really, where does the only thing I can do is say, from my perspective, where does it start? Where's the key thing of it leading? And there's kind of 2 or 3 which really resonated with me, where I think things are going. And the first one that you've got on the top left there is the resilience on the supply chain. And that's unsurprising. We've looked in the we've looked at our supply chain, and we've been thinking about our supply chains for years, and how do we make them more resilient? Because of course, procurement it boils down to 2 big things, really, doesn't it? Is let's buy stuff cheaper, buy more effectively, and manage the risk. And so this kind of goes into the managing the risk side. So there's the one thing that some of you have heard me speak of before, certainly heard Eloise speak of before, and that's the visibility down into the supply chain. Just because your tier 1s, that's one thing, but what about the tier 2s and 3s and 4s, and getting that visibility lower down? Horrid job to do manually. I've done it manually before, and it takes months and a lot of phone calls, and it's not a pleasant way. But there are solutions out there to automate that. There's AI out there which is really helping us get to know our supply chains and the depth of it. But then where we find ourselves at the moment, you might be able to tell that I'm British, and so there was this thing that happened a couple of years ago called Brexit. Then there's this other thing that's happened recently called a pandemic. And both things are really interesting with the supply chain, because we've tried to be more efficient with our supply chains over the years. Just-in-time procurement, just-in-time purchasing, having the minimal amount of stock possible on the books that we need. Well, that's a great thing financially. But what about when Brexit happens? What about when a pandemic happens? What about when the next thing happens? I don't know, asteroid from space. How do you balance off the just in case with the just in time? How do we balance that? What's the financial balance to have there? How much do we keep in stock? That is a really interesting bit of focus that I see coming over the next 12 months. And my focus on this, with Lance's guidance, is what's the next 12 months rather than what's the next 24, 36 or so. So resilience in the supply chain. And then just to pick on another couple of others is the experience. It's that consumer grade experience. We talk about digitalization, but unless we want to be in some ghost town of applications, we need to have consumer grade usability, the type of stuff that we're all, familiar with. We all mess around with these things, don't we? With apps on them. It's consumer grade. Who reads the instructions on how to use any of this? Nobody. And that's what you need. You need the consumer-driven user interfaces. That drives adoption. It makes people want to use the stuff, which then gives us the efficiencies we want in our organization, both in terms of process time and cycle time, but also people in the organization. And that feeds into so many of the others that we've got in here. We talk about the best of breed solutions and the composable solutions as well. We're composing these best of breed ecosystems. Well, if nobody's going to use them because they're not a consumer grade, beautiful, intuitive thing, then it's really, really not worth it. So you're going to see a huge focus and a much, much bigger push to things being so consumer grade, so user friendly, applications, mobile first. Years ago, Apple and Steve Jobs spoke about the post PC era. Well, really, we're in the mobile phone era. You sit there, use the apps on the phone. This will become these applications, your toolkit. When it's no longer one thing end to end, it's the best of breed. I want to know about spend, use the best spend thing. Risk, best risk thing. I want to do some an RFP, I use the best RFP thing.
Hey, Adam, I'm going to jump in and I have a question for you on that one. So I think if you had looked, even just 3 or 4 years ago, if you talked to a lot of big enterprise companies or the Gartners and Forresters of the world, they would have said within procurement technology, people were moving less towards best of breed and more towards having 1 or 2 vendors to provide as much technology as possible. I think you happen to be spot on and people are moving to best of breed, but I think that's a relatively new phenomenon, again, that's kind of taken off. I'm just curious, do you agree with that statement or what's your perspective on it?
Oh, for sure, because we've been listening to, I'm sorry, Eloise, you can do this if you want. We've been listening to consultants coming in for years and years and years saying, consolidate, here's the best of breed end to end that does it all. But what we find out is that, okay, if we assume it does do it all, it does some stuff, but it doesn't do all the stuff. And it certainly doesn't do all the stuff to being the best of breed. It might be the best of breed out of the single end-to-end solutions, which is wonderful, but there's always stuff to enhance and add on. And for each of those elements within that solution, then we find with the pace of change and the startups that are coming over the last 3 to 5 years, that you've got some incredible innovations there. And AI particularly being developed from scratch with the automation, the intelligence, the AI, the machine learning that's in these point solutions is being deployed faster, better, and cheaper than it is in the end-to-end solutions. Yeah. So if you want the best of breed stuff.
And I was going to say the other thing I think may be driving some of that, and I agree with your points, is just the ease of which integration can occur within best of breed solutions too is getting easier every year, which I think allows enterprises to stitch together that best of breed as well.
Well, that comes into, and I know, Lance is going to slap me if I don't shut up in a minute, but just on that point exactly, that last bit, when we talk about build your own in here, we've got low code and zero code platforms. You've got some fantastic startups with amazing stuff that, the citizen developers can create not just their own solution, but they can create an orchestration layer. Not even the startups, but the big ones, business process management players, the likes of Pegasystems with low code platforms. Citizen developers, you can start to hook these solutions together in a workflow automated using REST APIs, completely standardized, drag and drop. It's there today, and we're doing that, exactly that today.
And Jason, so I'm trying to not chime in here, but I literally just wrote the book on that, what you just described. So because we have, sorry, Adam, I can't let this topic go by, because we have made that shift. You're right, 3 or 4 years ago, that would have been sacrosanct, or just heretical to think that you could go back to best of breed, because those of us have been around for many years remember the early 2000s, and then we shifted. But we have, for all the reasons Adam said, and then the other one, Adam, to connect to your previous point, was that user experience. Most of these best of breeds have a modern user experience connected to all that integration and capability. And the only thing I would say is, because we're growing our capabilities and our remit. So the old suite paradigm, we're not going to go back to that.
No, and I'd agree. I mean, Greg's mentioned it in the chat here as well, is that in reality, most of the single solution providers have basically acquired organizations without adopting the code. And if you're really, really critical, and Jason, you and I, came from an Ariba background, you could argue that single solution versus best of breed was a marketing ploy.
Right.
Because the only person that's really a single organization is it's an Oracle or maybe an iValuer, but even Coupa is a best of breed organization. They've
done 10 or 15 acquisitions in the last 5 years. So
and they've done it well, by the way. They've done it well. They've built their own ecosystem, the best of breed platform in the best possible way. But if you combine where we've come from and where we're going, then it is the future. So, but I now, Adam, stop for a moment for breath. So I don't know if there's Patrick, or Eloise, is there anything else you'd like to add? Any call outs here on the digitalization theme? We've got a couple more minutes before I'm going to ask people to kind of do a quick vote.
Maybe I think that the one additional point to complement the discussion we've just had is there's so much choice out there, right? We've got so many options these days. I think it's important to figure out what is it that you need. For a company like Roche, for example, if we went 100% best of breed, I think that would be super challenging, right? Super challenging. We've decided to sort of go hybrid, right? Go with a technology that builds the backbone, keep this backbone lean and simple, and bolt on, right? Build around it and connect. Not integrate, because that takes time and money. Again, consulting firms make big money with that. So we bolt on, we connect. And I think that is important. And we will see many more sort of personas, I think, develop over the next few months and years that I think use a combination of end-to-end and best of breed. And that's a huge opportunity for these startups sort of work together and respond to these personas that are developing, right? Why do we need another startup to be the connecting tissue, or another company, if maybe some of these startups can just work together and say, okay, I understand for this type of client, we need these 3-4 solutions, and we just develop our own connecting thing, right? So I think that's something that I see coming up more and more with startups, and so silo solutions start talking to each other.
Yeah, I'd agree, Patrick. There's this composable point that one of the guys has recommended, and it's the compounding element of things as well.
The critical thing to remember with all of this, Lance, you looked at 4,000 odd suppliers, ended up with a ProcureTech 100. So 100, there's a huge overlap and duplication. So it's not just best of breed, it's best of breed for you. And so it's what is the best of breed that works for the nuanced individual organization of Roche or of BT. And mine's going to be different to Patrick's, right? Not because the thing's not best of breed in their own right, but it's for me. It's you've got to choose the thing that is right for you, and don't just listen to me or Patrick and say, product ABC is the most amazing thing. Well, it may be for us, but not for you.
Yeah, cool. So one last thing I'll call out on this page, and it's an interesting one as a trend, and a few people might say, is it really a trend, was the S4HANA comment on here as well. Because there's a lot of triggers that are going to happen next year. It might be inflation, it might be a cybersecurity risk, but equally so, there's a lot of organizations basically going to be implementing S4HANA. And because of that, organizations are going to have to make a choice. They're going to have to do other things. So it is a kind of a trend stroke trigger point, which is going to drive action in other places as well. And you'll see that as we go through these trends. There's the reality of the world, S4HANA, as well as these trends and predictions that tie together to create what we're doing this year and next as well. So I'm going to just quickly move on to the next one. Just as a reminder, take a look at your page at your voting page. Quickly vote on that section, and then we're going to move on to the next one now, which is intelligence, the second theme, which Jason, you were going to take a lead on this for us.
Yeah, I mean, when I kind of looked at across this set of predictions, the one that really jumps out to me, and I think it's going to be a common theme through this, and it relates to kind of Adam's opening comment in the last one, was really around supply chain mapping and transparency, right? So through the pandemic, there's never, in our lifetimes, or at least in my lifetime, the importance of supply chain resiliency and transparency and certainty of supply has never been greater, right? And if the pandemic was a 6-month thing that went away and we didn't have to worry about it or think about it anymore, that might have gone in 2022. We might not care about that as much, but the pandemic has shown a lot of resiliency as well, and is now 2+ years and no sign of ending. And I think the importance of really understanding all the layers of your supply chain, where your goods or services are, and are you going to get what you think you bought when you think you're supposed to get it? That is a paramount piece of information and understanding, and that is, I think, what's driving a lot of companies in terms of trying to understand where they're going to invest in procurement technology. So to me, that's the one that just jumps off the page in terms of its continued importance. And I don't think that one is going away for a long time after what we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yep.
Any of my fellow panelists want to react to that one? Because I want to focus on that one, because I just think that's so fundamental to what we're going to see.
So 100% right. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. We look back and there's been this pandemic. We look back further, and for us in the UK, there's Brexit. You look back and you look back, there's always something else in history that occurred. But now is the time that I think we're just really going, okay, this was so big with Brexit. It was so big with the pandemic. Now's the time that people have actually woken up, and how do we get that knowledge, that intelligence, and that insight into the supply chain?
Yeah, and there's several of these items to me that all kind of relate to that, around your supplier due diligence and boosting resilience, and all of those kind of relate to this general theme of supply chain transparency and mapping and risk management, that really all come together. So that's kind of the big one that I take away when I see these and that I'm thinking about. I think the other one that's really interesting is this cyber risk, and understanding the cyber risk within our supply base and within our set of vendors. And I think that's a really emerging area that is being solved by a lot of procurement technology companies. And I think it's top of mind for a lot of organizations as something that keeps them up at night, and they really are thinking about a lot, is the cyber risk and how are the risk of our suppliers and their vulnerabilities could potentially affect us, and what do we do to understand that, measure it, and be able to respond to that. So those are a couple that really jumped out to me.
Yeah. It's interesting as well, Jason, when we looked at all of the predictions together, obviously there was the theme, which we'll talk about in a minute, of sustainable procurement, but also that cybersecurity theme fed all the way through. Now, you would expect it coming from basically digital procurement companies, but equally so, I think it's omnipresent. I'd agree with what you're saying there.
I think that there's some great stuff here on this page, and especially in terms of the first one, Jason, transparency and mapping. The watch out, I think, for us in supply chain, procurement, and finance in particular, is don't forget the so what, right? I've seen so many procurement professionals in particular who spend years on data mapping, building the greatest dashboards and whatsoever, but unfortunately forgot about the so what, right? I know so many people who pride themselves with the greatest performance, supplier performance management, but unfortunately they've forgotten about management. They do performance reporting, right? And there's a huge risk with all the stuff on this page that you forget about the practical side, the so what, the actual action. So my sort of big watch out here is do something with it, right? Quick results and then learn and grow is my sort of complementing comment to everything that's on this page.
Yeah. It's probably the hardest thing to say as well is, well, what's the one action you want to take? You know what I mean? If you're going to, and what's the biggest action you're going to take? And therefore, what's the minimum amount of data you need to be able to support that action as well?
It's an interesting point. Just to quickly reflect, that we mustn't forget that the source of these came from the solution providers, right? And so they're going to be saying, here's the insights, here's the data, here's the information, here's the stuff. And so it's up to us, as Patrick, you rightly say, we can't just sit there and go, look, we've got wonderful stuff. We've generated an efficiency in the organization. We can have less people because we don't need people doing dashboarding because we have a tool doing it. Yeah. But it doesn't get away from the fact that, it is what you're going to do with it. I mean,
but I think that's, you're absolutely right. I think, but also we need to challenge solution providers to not just do workflow automation, but decision support, right? Or action support, whatever you want to call this. Yeah. Because workflow automation, great, but still, I didn't do anything with it really. It just made my not doing faster.
Yeah, it's here's all the information, here's all the insights, but you've got to do it. Just somebody saying, right, here's an interesting fact figure, here's an interesting opportunity. I might have a most incredible platform there that's like some I don't know, MI5, MI6 bit of intelligence which says do all of these things and you'll save yourself £1 billion.
Yeah,
so just getting you still have to do it.
Exactly. This is great fuel. You still need the engine, right? To use fuel.
And Patrick, I want to build on your practicality because this is great, and the so what is exactly right. But every client I walk into, I challenge them on their supplier golden records and their data management practices, and it's always a disaster. And they kind of like hide under the table and sort of look away. And so I think while all of this is great and there is some really amazing innovation, the other thing is, and this is more of a request for 2022, is stop making excuses for bad data and actually get the data, because having this discussion is the one we want to have, but so many times we're stuck in just that bad data cycle.
Yeah, but also bad data, at least from a excuse perspective, right? Let bad data not be the excuse. Do something about this, but the aim shouldn't be perfect data. The aim should be better data to do some stuff with, right?
So that you can make decisions, right?
Exactly.
Well, it's become yes, exactly. It's becoming an excuse, and that's what I want to get beyond. Is good enough data to do this stuff.
And doing something about it that maybe prompts us to move to the next area, to be quite honest. So once again, I'll ask you to take a look at the kind of the question set, vote for your top 3 on the panel, and then as you're doing that, we'll move to the next page, because probably the biggest thing that people said they want to do something about in terms of the trends and predictions was on sustainability and people. Prosperity and the planet as well. And Eloise, you kindly said you'd take a lead on this page as well for us.
I would love to. So while everybody's voting, and as Adam said, resist the urge to engage with the phone. So I think so that this, to me, this page, at least a number of these are sort of okay, these are things that are either being done or just need to be bolstered. I think the idea of integrating ESG into all that we do is it's table stakes. It's a given. It's what we should have been doing in 2021, or at least have started and will continue through. So it's not that part is just business as usual to me. Looking be at like the triple bottom line, the looking beyond cost, all of that. So those are, to me, less predictions and more of just continuing what has already been started. Where I think where I'm really excited about this topic and really pushing is where we go next. And where we go next is when we think about risk and we think about sustainability and sort of the improving the planet. The biggest risk, the biggest opportunities for this type of work are in the places that we have that they're hardest to see or that we have the least visibility into. And especially when we think about food supply chains, raw material supply chains, or at the source materials where we don't have a lot of visibility. And so we have to move. So, and there's nothing wrong with supplier ratings. I like the ratings providers that are out there. I like the self-attestation. Those are good first steps, but those are just, again, sort of entry-level steps. We have to move beyond what we can gather from news stories and what we can gather from suppliers filling out surveys to actually what I like the term boots on the ground. We actually have to see what's happening. And when you see what's happening, I posted at the end of last year about what's happening in recycling centers, how much recyclable material is going into landfills. We look at fishing, sustainable fishing practices. How are we actually looking at what's happening in the seas? There's a lot of conflict minerals, a lot of forced labor around that, around commodities like palm oil. And so what are we doing that gets visibility and traceability at that level where it's very opaque and we can't sit in our offices in North America or the UK or Europe and actually get boots on the ground? And I think that's where we have to get to if we're really going to move the needle. Otherwise, we run the risk of just doing corporate self-promotion. And so the one that really jumped out at me on this one was the water access. And I think that's a huge piece that's related to all of this. And especially if you're in the CPG for food and beverage, water is such a key piece. And then of course, oil and gas and energy and chemical companies where there's historical pollution of water sources. So I think if we're really going to take the planet and the sustainability and all this stuff seriously, we have to go further. And that's what I love about this page and the prediction is, and in my own work, I am pushing us to go significantly further than what we can just simply do today, because what we can simply do today is good and we should be amplifying that. And then because Jason had mentioned it, and it's on this page as well, cybersecurity, our next major disruption will be a cybersecurity event. It will be very big. And I think related to that should be a clarion call for everybody in procurement, is this social fraud and fraudulent payments. And that's an area that I'm looking at very closely this year, because I think there's a lot of potential for fraud interspersed with this cybersecurity problem. So that's what I love about this page. So more of business as usual, but also moving beyond the simple stuff.
Hey, Eloise, I've got a question for you. I just want to follow up on a really interesting perspective on kind of the boots on the ground and getting, kind of deeper into, some of these areas where, as you correctly pointed out, we can't see from the US or the UK or wherever we are. When I talk to a lot of the providers or vendors in this space, it's actually interesting. I see folks who used to have boots on the ground no longer have boots on the ground. So they're actually going to less, deeper inspection and more automated self-reporting and third-party data sources for doing that versus the boots on the ground. So how do you think we're gonna, I'm just curious to reacting, like, how do we fix that gap, right? Where fewer people are out there doing the boots on the ground, but we might actually need more of it, right? There's not people filling that void right now, I think.
Well, since you're in the investment space, I think I'm gonna throw this right back at you. I mean, look, at boots on the ground, expensive. It's hard to do. Doing self-attestation is just very complicated surveys, and
Yep.
we can do it at scale, and it looks great to the balance sheet. Or if you're a ratings company, looks great because I can sign 1,000 customers and charge and from I told you I was gonna throw this right back at you. From a VC point of view, it's like, oh, great growth, great this, great that. And even if you're somebody at a brand or Adam or Patrick, like, these things look good on your MBOs each year that say, hey, we did a lot of stuff. We're tracking all this stuff. We've got, we've queried all our suppliers. They're all using sustainable practices, and that's good. And then in 2 years, you come to find out that your supplier that said they're not doing this, or their your tier 4 supplier is doing something that of
Crazy.
Course,
right.
Yeah. And whatever they're doing, they don't really take the hit. The brand takes the hit. I mean,
Right.
people have, there are targets on the big enterprises because everybody likes to drag them through and there's lots of them. You'll end up on a John Oliver special. So I think so to answer your question, yes, it's expensive to do boots on the ground, and I also think this is why you have to do it at a industry level. So you're starting to see, or you've seen this actually in textiles, where they're pooling their resources and hiring folks to do that because, and of course you'll have some synergies too as you get into sort of conflict minerals. The point is, you have to look for this stuff. If you just sit in your comfortable office and tick the box, that's my point. Is we have to move beyond that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just hard to do, right? It's hard to do today.
And I'm not saying any of this is easy,
right?
But we just can't pretend that it doesn't exist. That's my point.
Great point.
I think, Jason, also it comes back to how serious are you about this, right? If you just want the sticker on your corporate report that says eco-friendly, right? You find many creative ways to get this sticker, right? But if you're serious about this and you mean it, you actually invest in it, I guess, and you make your suppliers invest in it, and you invest yourself into auditing and whatsoever. And I think it's hard to actually do it. We in procurement at Roche, we wanted to be real, so I have asked for money, I got money, and we've invested in a actually larger sustainability team that's now driving Scope 3 projects across the business with our suppliers. We actually develop ideas. We look for funding with our banks to invest in our suppliers, co-create the solutions, because we didn't want to buy some random certificate or sort of ask others to then do something. And we like, oh, okay, yeah, we ask 10 people and someone does something. I think it really comes down to mindset and whether you're real, right? I think that really is what it is.
And that's the
we think it will pay off. We think it will pay off.
Yeah, I'm not sure everybody is at that same level of intention that you are.
Well, and also keep in mind now, you have, and Adam, you alluded to this earlier, but I forget the term you used, but these citizen data scientists that are out, you refer to it in the organization, but you also have them externally, and you have these kids that are deconstructing supply chains and looking for these social issues. There's a great example here in the US of a Girl Scout who was like 14 years old, figured out that Girl Scout cookies, one of the sacrosanct food elements in the US, actually is made with palm oil, and started corresponding with kids that were being forced into labor on palm oil plantations. So That's not the kind of press you want, and you can't control that in this 21st century.
And there's an interesting thing here. So that citizen developer bit, but also with supplementary data. So there's always a place to ask for self-certification for companies, but it is putting in the supplementary data that you can find. And I think this is where we're going to see a lot more of, particularly in the ESG area, is sentiment analysis from information that's publicly available on the internet. Simple example would be you could just integrate Glassdoor, Twitter, and company names and find out the sentiment of the employees at that company. What are they actually saying on Glassdoor that they think of that company? What are they saying on Twitter? Is that indicative of behaviors that are occurring in that company? How does that then bump up against what the self-certification and reporting is saying? So that's one thing. Secondly, certainly in the telco industry, we have cross-company organizations where we check our suppliers, where we jointly check it, form an organization, and we all need to do the same checks on our same suppliers. So share it around makes it a little bit easier to cover the full wealth of everybody that's going on. And then the last one is there is technology around, again, good old mobile phones, right? That we were looking at about a year ago, where you can put a mobile phone with the video camera with some AI in the hands of somebody on the ground. So you could just hire somebody for a day to go around a factory with the AI saying, point the camera here, point the camera there, analyze what's being filmed to pick up on indications of things going awry, astray, or incorrect behaviors. So I think all of these things are going to start to come to a head, but is it in the next 12 months?
Yeah. Well, what I would say, though, is that it might not be in the next 12 months, but I think the area where we're going to see the most amount of growth fastest is in technology that supports ESG. So, we've got this prediction here, demand for digital solutions to enable scale and efforts be greater than supply. But that is actually causing natural pressure in terms of demand, and also some of the technologies. You just said it there, applying mobile technology to a problem that's existed for years is giving you a solution. And the same thing is happening with blockchain, the same thing's happening with RFDI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, this is going to be we're going to see the fastest change. It might not be as far as you want it, Adam, as far as any of us want it, but this will be the fastest area. It certainly, it has been this year, will be going forward as well. Right, I'm going to
back into the previous slide. Sorry, Lars, it comes back into the previous slide of intelligence. It's another layer of intelligence of bringing all of these various data points together, analyzing the big data, and where is then the insight and the actionable insight from these across everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, take the time to vote on your mobile for your top 3, and we'll just skip to the final theme, which is organization. Things don't really come together without, your organization. So Patrick, take us away.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. I think I want to talk about 3 themes in particular that are also very close to my heart. One is sort of the customer lens, right? And I want to make it broader. Actually, for many, many years, procurement's only customer in their mind was procurement, right? We talked about spend and all that and RFPs and whatsoever. At some point, we sort of figure out, actually, we're doing this for someone, so let's actually talk to the business and to the stakeholders. So we added one lens, right, as the business, and I think we're getting better. We're still not good enough, but I think it's very important, especially when we talk about, this is a technology discussion ultimately, when we talk about adoption and usability and all these things, right, we need to take into account what we do here, we're doing for someone. So ultimately, the customer needs to be involved much more. An additional customer, I think the procurement is now starting to consider is the supplier. So what we are doing, we're not only doing for someone, the business, but we are doing this with someone, for someone. So I think a very critical and very important prediction, and I would go much further than just saying it's a prediction, it's a key requirement, right? Partnerships, working together, co-development, co-creation, that's the future. So the supplier experience and making us wanted I guess, is super critical and something that is very close to my heart. The second one, which I find exciting to see on here, is that procurement needs to move beyond just responding to something, right? Yeah, we can do it. Let me run an RFP and ask the market for a price. I guess no one really should care about this anymore soon. It's about the solution to the underlying business problem, right? How can we, again, connecting to the previous theme here, how can we connect this? How can we partner with someone and co-create maybe even a new solution to the actual business problem, right? Solving business problems, understanding the business problem and responding to it. And the third big theme is the who does it ultimately is the talent, yeah? But I think we should, again, look beyond the traditional talent, our people. I think also to an extent, digital is becoming a talent. And we should take care of how do we treat our digital, whatever this is, yeah? And the one thing that comes to my mind is help digital to help us, yeah? Understand how we set this thing up, how we embed it in our ecosystem, our organization, how we make our processes work around it for this thing to be most effective. And therefore, I'm sort of applying to an extent the talent lens also to our technology, because that is something that helps us too, works with us. And it goes back to the connectivity and making sure human AI, human and digital work well together. These are sort of my three themes that I think are most important on this slide.
Yeah, just a quick question for you, Patrick. I mean, there's this the talent and the human element of things. There's two sort of big predictions here. One, which was about the great exodus, great resignation, which in reality is higher according to the statistics for the younger you are, and yet there's more Generation Z, young people coming into procurement and supply chain than ever before. What are you seeing at Roche and maybe more broadly?
Two things that I think nicely connect to the point that I raised. Number one, I think we need to excite people around what we're doing. Right? Procurement needs to be, or work needs to be exciting. I think then they need to take something away rather than just executing, doing a task, or following a request. So I think there needs to be an element of shaping, creating, right, developing, growing. And I really believe if the talent grows, the organization will grow with it. It's not the other way around, right? I think you need to look after the people, after the talent, that makes you grow. So creating that environment is critical. But also the other point important to me is giving them the opportunity to, I think, connect what they do to the purpose. Yeah. If talking about Roche, if I told my teams, get money, and then the organization is about saving lives and bringing products faster to market, right? I think there is no connection. But if I tell my people, help the business to get a drug to market faster, right? And good example is if I talk to R&D and if I told them I can save you 10%, I don't think that they're that much interested. If I talk to them, I can take your budget further and you can do 10 clinical trials instead of 9, they will jump at me, right? They want more of this. And that's how I think we need to connect what we do to the purpose, understand the business, and that will drive excitement in our organization. And that I think makes people stay.
Okay, excellent, thanks.
Can I just make a plug on the right-hand side of the screen? Because whoever put the year of the supplier and supplier experience, I 100% agree with. This year is like we have done so much on the buy side, or on the buyer experience, and I do want to just flag that I think supplier experience is this is the time for that now.
I 100% agree. Not to pile on, but when I looked at this, that was the one. The year of the supplier is the one that jumps out to me more than anything, because I think the dynamic has changed, and we'll talk more about it as we go on to some of these other slides. But that's the one that jumps out to me.
What would be interesting as well, I think, is how suppliers define their success, because I think traditionally when you come out of a period of not recession but extreme stress, then there's often one or two reactions. There can be the reaction which Patrick kind of referred to, which is co-create, co-develop, we're going to get stronger together, versus the other side where if we're not lucky, it will start driving in more inflationary pressures. It'll be more competitive, and it'll take us back a step in terms of the approach. So I'm just saying there will be some suppliers that show strength as they come out and co-create, versus others that maybe go back to bad.
Yeah, and that will probably, talking to, as Eloise said, the buyer experience is probably going to relate a lot to what their experience was on receiving from the buyer over the last decade, and what that was like. They're going to turn around and reciprocate in a lot of cases.
Absolutely.
Can I just make another one too? Like CFOs will give CPOs a seat at the table. No, that's not how that works. I'm not being critical of that, but if you're a CPO, you take your seat at the table. And Adam, I like to use Cyril as an example. Cyril didn't ask for he just took it. Like he is of, I write about this a lot, but he is of a new generation of leaders that are just stepping in and taking their role. I mean, look at the previous slide, all the ESG stuff, that's board level topics. And who's enacting that? Procurement. So we're not at the will of the CFO. I think that's, I think it's ours to take and establish ourselves. I don't know, Adam.
Sorry, go ahead, Adam. I was just going to relate one sec. I was just going to relate that to Patrick's point, right? If you're in a situation where you understand the rest of the business and you're partnering with the rest of the business, and they say, hey, we want to get this drug to market 6 months faster than we historically have ever been able to do, and the CPO can say, here's how we're going to help you do that, you're going to have a seat at the table. There's no question about it.
Of course. And all of this is so interrelated. We talk about year of the supplier experience. In BT, we talk about we're the sales force of the bottom line. It's that complete shift in mentality on. We spoke earlier about the resilience in the supply chain. How are we doing this, just in time versus just in case? Well, when things are going wrong, how do we ensure our supply? Because we want to be the customer of choice. We want to be so easy to do business with. We want the suppliers to say, you know what, my goodness, I got onboarded in less than a day, not in less than 6 months. I got onboarded in less than a day, and it was really easy. I got paid on time, and it was really easy. I received a purchase order and I made the payment, and it was really easy. I want to be that supplier of choice. We want to be the customer of choice. So when it comes around to how do we make the supply chain slicker, more resilient when things start going astray through pandemics or other things, asteroids, who knows? How does that, it's the relationship, it's that, supply bit, the supplier experience. We talk about our customer experience. Patrick, you rightly said, we used to be our own only customer. That is so real for us now. In BT Source, this carve out, taking procurement and separating it out from the mothership into a separate standalone company. That is so real for us now, that we have a paying customer who was just another part of the internal business before. So customer of choice, supplier of choice, it all goes hand in hand.
Excellent. I'm going to keep us moving here a little bit. Once again, take the time to just quickly vote for your top three. We did have 2 or 3 individual predictions that didn't fit into those 4 buckets. And we talked a bit about a cybersecurity event and inflation. We've also started to see already, a pickup in the activity of people acquiring different businesses. Even in the start of this year, we've seen 2 or 3 acquisitions already happen. And obviously there's a potential increase in the level of inventory levels, which talks, Adam, to your point about just in case, just in time. Ultimately, people are going to be starting to hold more inventory, and that does cost. And so where do you get the right balance? So those are all the predictions we've gone through there. So I want people just to, once again, take the time to quickly do your final votes now. We've got sort of a countdown. Let's give you 15 seconds to count down. And just as you do that, I just want to say a big thanks as well to all these different companies here that basically provided us with all the predictions. It took time for them to do that. They've kind of put a good degree of thought into that in terms of the whats and the whys. And there will be more detail kind of shared over the next week via the blogs and notifications. And once again, the whole of this session has been recorded, so people can listen to that as well.
Lance, if I may, a quick question for you and Jason. When I'm seeing this page and sort of the last prediction, the sort of market consolidation and the acquisitions, from a customer perspective, right? Do we think this is a good thing? I mean, from an innovation drive, because if I look at, and I'll stop in a second, if I look at the amount of startups, the amount of innovation, the amount of choice that I have today, and look even 5 years back, nowhere near. So for me as a customer, what's happening is amazing. I don't actually like the threat, for me, the threat of consolidation and acquisition. It would be great to get your perspective and opinion.
Yeah, I think for me, it will happen. It will happen. I don't think it'll happen to the speed that people think it will. You've got organizations like Kielvar, Scoutby, and others that are still growing. They believe the market is big enough that they can continue to grow into those markets, and also to a degree with the technology available. We talked about this kind of plug and play. People are accepting the fact that they don't necessarily have to acquire all in one place. And the strategies of some of these bigger companies are, well, okay, we'll add if it's a significant gap, but equally so, they may just add to the ecosystem in a different way. So, I think it will happen.
It's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen. There's no question, because there is value creation for those companies that do the acquiring, or at least in most cases, that has been, kind of what has been proven. So I don't think that's going to stop. Will it accelerate? I don't know if it's going to accelerate, because if you look at 2021, M&A activity as a whole, not specifically in procurement technology, was up, I think it was 60% over 2020, which is just an astonishing number, because 2020 actually didn't shrink from 2019. It grew as well, just not as fast. 2021 is a year that we've never seen from an M&A perspective. And so I think it will be hard to continue that pace.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would say as well is that, what we often say is bear in mind that it worst case scenario, best case scenario, it will happen. So you need to approach the solution that you're working with with a plug and play mentality. So you need to be conscious of what you're going in, but also how you go out. So how are you going to manage data? How are you going to manage confidentiality? How are you going to manage IP? And accept the fact that, at some stage that business, like BT, you had with Supply acquired by Microsoft, it kind of goes in, and then you kind of say, well, okay, happy with that, great, or basically no, and then so you're looking for the next solution that's going to come in as well.
Hey, Lance, I was just going to add one other point, but to the question, I do think there is more VC, earlier startup innovation investment in this space over the last couple of years, way more so than there had been the previous 10 years. And so I don't think that's stopping. So I think the early stage innovation and startups will continue into the next few years. And so I think that's where you'll see a lot of the innovation is coming from.
Well, let me give you a number. Yeah, let me build on that, Jason. Let me give you a number for Coupa, right? This $1 billion value, company, or whatever they're
20,
whatever. Yeah, 20
billion.
So from 2007 to 2012, they raised 5 rounds for a total of $49 million. So that's Series A, B, C, D, and E, $49 million. Vendors Series A was 60 million. Interos raised 100 and Series C for 100 million on $1 billion valuation. On and on and on. I mean, the funding is
it's off the charts.
Absurd. Yeah, it's off the. I mean, think about Coupa's trajectory compared to and vendors. Whether they're good or bad doesn't. I mean, $60 million is just staggering.
Well, with all of these as well, we got to go. So Patrick, you and I have to go into this with our eyes open, and the benefits of working with some of these smaller startups and the speed and the attention, speed of change that they can do to their products, the attention they can give to us is all wonderful stuff. We need to go in with our eyes open, though, that there are going to be acquisitions. So Supplari to Microsoft, because as an example, there was, we use Supplari. The big companies are going to want to acquire to plug gaps. So the big companies are going to want to acquire. We look at SAP and they have historically done it all over the shop and will continue to do so. The small startups, and certainly with the VCs funding them, are looking for an exit. They're looking for a return on their investment. And so it's in their interest to be doing it as well. Where you get the big exceptions is the ones like Celonis, who go in 5 years from nothing to being worth over $1 billion in a 5-year space of time. So how many of those unicorns really appear and can grow that fast, that rapidly, and become worth that much that it's just prohibitively expensive for another company to go and acquire them? They become those standalone.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, Adam, also you and I have a role to play in this, right? So you started this, we're doing this as well. We're funding some of these startups, working with them, right? Co-creating, which to an extent also secures, I think, some of that innovation that we need.
Yeah, I would say that.
It's an exciting topic. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry for derailing the conversation, but it was an interesting topic I wanted to pick up on.
No, completely agree. And that's the whole point, discussing some of these predictions. So what we're going to do now is just take a quick look at how everybody's polled, and then we'll actually then go on and answer some of the questions that have been asked, both in the chat and the Q&A, before kind of finish off with the last section. So, Lizzie, are you okay to kind of share that with us? So what we've got here is basically the polls against each of the individual areas. So, and again, we'll share this afterwards as well. But as you can see, this is the first area we talked about: digitalization. Blue, green, and yellow are the top 3, which are basically intuitive and flexible digital solutions, best of breed, and technology-enabled transparency. I'm pleased that that's called out, actually, because we talked about it a bit by default, but it's very much one of the things I think is the only thing that's going to give us transparency at scale is the technology as well. So those are a pretty fair reflection of the top 3, I think. Then with the next one, quite a good spread actually across the board here. But I think echoing what you said there, Patrick, about everything needs to be focused around action. 38% of people kind of saying it's got to be about action. And then behind that was 38% as well, actually, on supply chain mapping and transparency. So consistent to what you called out at the start, that section there, Jason, as well. And then, next section here, people, planet, prosperity, ESG, big on integration of ESG and all supplier management being the norm. I mean, it as Eloise said, that's what we want. It should be happening with now. It's not happening now or happening last year, then it should be happening now. And demand for digital solutions and outweigh the supply, I agree. And then cybersecurity, which is what we mentioned there as well. Actually, there's one I missed there on 36.
I'm not quite sure how the percentage on the maths works out. But...
Yeah, I think it's 36%
of people vote for 3, so there's probably like 300%, right? Yeah,
it's 36% of people voted for that particular one. So it's not the percentage of. Sorry, I've described it the wrong way around there. Yeah, cool. You're good to call me out, Adam. Indeed, with my
okay. So half the people said ESG at some. I got you. Makes sense.
Yeah, I got you. And then this final one here, we've got basically the majority of people, 17 people, kind of have said, be bold in providing business solutions to problems and influencing and providing more value as well, 33%. So some good, really good feedback from everybody who's participated. And again, we'll share this as well afterwards as well. These are the last four that didn't fit in, but still some high voting there on, and a lot of acquisition happening. But again, this is relative to the other trends there as well. So great, thanks Lizzie for that. So we'll jump quickly back to the presentation, which is me. And what I quickly wanted to do while we've got the Q&A here before we dive into the final section was just pick up a couple of quick questions that have come here as well. In the decision, in the digitalization area, there was a point around bot-to-bot negotiation. I've got a pretty strong opinion about this, but any of the guys got an answer to the question? What's your perspective on bot-to-bot negotiation?
It's further out, a long way further out than just the next 12 months. Yeah, we can have a look at, there was some interesting news stuff. I think it was last year that you had Facebook did two bots negotiating with one another. They invented their own language. And yeah, so yes, it will come. We can sort of like look back on even in financial markets, and yeah, it used to be people shouting down a phone and trading, and then it moved over to robotics, if you like, algorithms doing high-speed trading. Yeah, it is going to come, but is it going to happen next 12 months? No.
Yeah, I agree. And if you agree with Patrick's points about the need for collaboration and problem solving with your suppliers and vendors, I'm not sure bot-to-bot negotiation is going to be your first approach or method for getting there.
And I think to add to this, just absolutely agree. I think we need to look behind the buzz around this and understand actually our spend patterns, right? So there's a small percentage of supplier relationships, of requisitions, I guess, that account for a large percentage of spend. That I think is the opportunity for collaboration, for really invest with people and everything. There's the next sort of, I don't know, X large percent where I think we can use technology to help us, right? Make things faster, better, marketplace solutions whatsoever. And then there's this tail, I think, where we can today already start using great tail spend solutions. And that's where these negotiation automation solutions really make sense to me. And there are some starting to become available. I think they are maybe not bot to bot, some super artificial intelligence and whatsoever type stuff. But I think we are seeing some just figure out where to use them for what.
Well, I think where we're at right now is using the likes of the obvious ones, the intercepts that you can put onto, you say tail spend, the intercepts that you can put onto these things, and you can start to automate out RFQs, likes of fair market, that kind of thing. We're at that level of automation right now, and it's prices, right? It's like, here is the specific thing I want, out to a whole bunch of suppliers, give me the best price. Everybody knows it's competitive. That back-to-back, that back and forth negotiation bit, which kind of infers back and forth negotiation, and more than just on price, on contractual terms, on the full level of the commercials, that requires such a level of intelligence and training for the AI, of knowledge on what's applicable, meaningful, and what the risk appetite is in your company. That's further away.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think it is, but I think it'll come for certain parts of spend, especially because if you look at the two things that have happened, and we saw it with the ProcureTech 100, a lot of financial solutions, which you talked about and made reference to, Adam, basically moving from payments into procurement, spend management, and the other way, contract management becoming incredibly sophisticated. So now you are and have got many of the unicorns are in that space. They've applied machine learning, they've applied AI, and if the two things come together, then you've got a healthy amount of momentum in certain pockets of spend. So yeah.
And I think also, Lance, if and when we see workflow automation tools, like in sourcing or in negotiation, for example, become more intelligent, to become more automated, you can argue that's a step in that direction too, right? Because you can basically send an email triggered by a system. If they see a contract runs out, if the price for the biggest cost driver has dropped, let's send a few emails to a supplier. Let's see how they react.
Yeah, exactly.
Some great stuff, I think, that's being developed.
I'm going to move us on to the next couple of questions so we can fire through them. But a quick one. Give me your top three, Adam and Patrick, skills for a procurement professional in the digital world. What are the top three skills? This is a question from Jose.
Cool. Goodness me, you need to be able to just use the technology. Go in there with an open mind. Forget about what a company has done before, what you have done before. Go into it with your consumer brain on, your consumer brain in your home life, where you use an app store, you use a phone, you download stuff and you just use it. Go in with that mindset, number one. Number two, the ability to look at data, to draw the insights, to use the intelligence and connect multiple things together is the second one. And I think really for me it's a combination of that. It's the consumer grade mindset, the use the tools, use the digitization, but use it as a tool. The intelligence is in here. Everybody in procurement is employed because of their brain to be a shrewd negotiator, to be able to make things cheaper, manage the risk. The intelligence, not to do PowerPoint, not to do Excel. It's not why you're employed.
Great. Patrick, anything?
Super quick, complementing what Adam usually mentions first, do it, right? Just do it, right? It's take the risk, try it out. And second, important to me is, and I mentioned this earlier, don't forget about the problem you're trying to solve. Don't get carried away by all this great technology stuff and all the buzzwords and everything. Keep it simple, lean, right? Get going with something.
So Lance, can I just, since this is a topic, I want to just add in.
Yeah, sure.
So building, Patrick, on your point is the so what. So one of the skill that I think is the most important, one of the most important, is the art of storytelling, whether it's in written form, visual form, long form, short form, or even short form. So what's that?
The PowerPoint form.
Yeah. I want to kill PowerPoint, but that's but yes. But yeah, so how do we tell that story about the so what? And I think that's a skill that is missing in this digital era across functions and across industries. The other is this business athlete, as we call it, is the ability to understand and put yourself in the business's role. And in Patrick, your CRO example from earlier was the perfect example of that. And then I think love of data and intellectual curiosity, and that gets at Adam, what you were just saying, is we, in our personal lives, we do this. We are intellectually curious because I want to know how to pay with my watch or pay with my phone. I'm curious, I'm going to go figure that out versus just sitting back and passively telling me how to use the system. And I think that's that shift in digital that has to happen.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask one more question, then we'll move on here. Was again, it's one from Jose about integration. We talk about integration, but how simple is integration really?
Depends on what level you're wanting to do it and wanting to achieve it. Yeah, I'm software engineer by background from, I don't know, about 150 years ago. But there was always something that stuck with me, and that was to make things tightly defined and loosely coupled. So whatever a point solution is, make sure it is very, very tightly defined, that it is doing what you want it to do brilliantly. Yeah. So if it's doing spend analytics, it does spend analytics. It doesn't do contract management and it doesn't do RFPs. Keep it super tight, super cleanly defined. And make sure that the coupling with the other systems that you're wanting to do is loosely coupled. It's very, very simple. It exchanges information in one way. So those simple integrations, whatever you're deploying as this ecosystem, which we have, which Patrick, you're building, is tightly defined, loosely coupled ecosystem, so you can swap things in and out. Now, the integration may be a full level API, or it may be a simple bit of robotics, or it may be even as simple as just emails being sent. But integration can be many things, but keep it simple. And I think if you just stick with that, whatever you're doing, define it very, very tightly and very well, and make sure it's very loosely coupled to everything else.
Yeah, I think, Lance, for me, that the best integration is don't do it, right? So back to Adam's point, and if you have to do it, simple, just connect it. And I think I've seen so many examples in Roche where integration, or the threat of integration, almost stopped things that we're trying to do because it was seen too complicated, too much maintenance, too much whatsoever. And asking 3, 4, 5 questions, you quickly realized actually no integration needed. We can upload a data file once a month and it's the same outcome. Let's focus on that. But again, Adam is right. It needs to be well-defined, simple, structured, and then you send your email once a month. Done. Problem solved.
Great. Got you. Good. So thanks for the questions. I know there's a few in the chat which we haven't managed to get to, but we'll try and answer those offline as well. Wanted to move on to the sort of the last section here, which is talking about the panel's views on all of these predictions we've seen and all the conversation we've had. What is the most relevant, prediction and priority that links into procurement's purpose during 2022? So we're going to ask for it's kind of some final 1 or 2 thoughts on this. Adam, you look like you're poised, like a viper.
I was actually kind of dropping me in it again, Lance. Come on. I was considering, but there's a couple of points to make here. So we're talking about what's the predictions and the what's going to be coming. It's ultimately going to be market driven. So I've got a priority order of stuff to do. So is Patrick. Anybody is. We don't have the money, the resource, the time to do everything in one hit. We just can't. So we have to do things one at a time. So that priority order that we do things in will drive the market of which startups flourish and survive and which ones don't. There might be some fantastic ideas that nobody's going to be ready to implement for 10 years. And so those startups, honestly, are going to struggle if nobody's buying the stuff, right? So it's going to be that natural ordering will occur. Data, as always, is just a given. I know LOEs, there's no excuse for bad data. That's the given. That's the thing that should be just the footnote of these slides every year from now on. Lance, is sort your data out is always a priority. But for me, it's and certainly for us in BT Source, we're on this journey. We're on this journey now into 2 years in of digitizing it. We've got the point solutions done. So I'm looking to orchestration layers. I'm looking at that next level. What's the orchestration layer that links everything together? Not necessarily in a fully integrated way, as Patrick says, but how does it logically link together? What do we present back to the company? None of these solutions are just for procurement. The benefit to the rest of the business is massive, absolutely massive. And so with everything we do, what is it for the rest of the business? As I said before, big things for me, that whole supply chain resilience bit, that's going to be kind of the big priority, that I see coming over the next year.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, Adam. Jason, you're next on my staff.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm too far off from Adam or some of the themes that we've talked about. I liked Adam's phrase. I think it was just in case versus just in time. I came up with a slightly different one, which was certainty greater than cost or more important than cost, maybe in a lot of cases. That certainty of supply is a paramount issue for us today, and that is one that we've got to be solving for quite a bit. So that was probably my number one, which relates to a lot of discussion we had around supplier visibility and risk and transparency and all that. And I think the other part of it is just the power of suppliers, not just the year of supplier, but the power of suppliers. And that some of that power dynamic between buyers and suppliers, which I think has been on the buyer side for many years, has shifted somewhat and will probably continue to shift into 2022 and maybe beyond, depending what happens with the pandemic and inflation and things like that. I think it was Patrick that talked about, or somebody talked about competing for business or trying to win the business of our vendors. That's indicative of the shift in that kind of power of the relationship. And I think we'll see more and more of that in 2022 and beyond.
Okay, fantastic. Patrick, how are you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, everything that was just said is great stuff. Absolutely. Just to complement this, I think is really delivering solutions, delivering more than just what we've done, because that will earn you a seat at the table, that will allow you to do some of these things. If you're just another enabling function, then can you actually, do you get permission? Do you get the funding? Do you get everything to do the things that we discussed here? Right. So I think do more and earn your seat at the table, earn your ability to do the things that we discussed.
Brilliant. And then finally, Eloise.
Well, I'm going to go out there and push it because I'm a consultant, so I don't have day-to-day responsibility like Adam and Patrick, who actually do work. So I'm going to take my opportunity to sort of pontificate about the future a little bit more and be less grounded in reality. But I think we've managed to make it almost 90 minutes without talking about digital ledger technology or blockchain, although Lance, you did mention it slightly once. And I think the reason I think that this is a trend that you're going to see much more of this year is that regulators are really coming around to this. And I think as regulators open up these markets and sort of apply whatever sort of oversight that they're going to, it will create a frenzy and a flurry, especially around businesses. And I think the fact that Visa bought an NFT for $150,000 is sort of a signal that this is actually going to have some legs. And when you see what's going on with Facebook and the metaverse and all that, it's like I think there's a confluence of events that's going to push this. It's going to be largely hype, but I also think it would be remiss not to, as we think about this, and we can look back in 365 days and see how we were, but I do think that this is 2022 is going to be an inflection point for at least discussions about, if not, it's not adoption, but certainly discussions about DLT. And especially crypto as a legitimate form of currency. The only other one that I do want to just add just a small prediction, when we talk about all the investment going into these and the acquisitions and the money transacting in startups, I think there's another trend that I would predict for 2022 is that you're going to see a movement of leaders from moving out of big corporates and into these startups as well. And so I think you're going to get a reshifting of procurement leadership as some of these folks get very attractive packages to go help the startups grow and commercialize. So those are my two predictions. Yeah,
interesting enough. Actually, Adam, Patrick, and I were on a call earlier on today with a CPO from an automotive company, and he was at CES in Las Vegas last week. And one of the things he was getting excited about was elements of facial recognition, AR, VR, made reference to the metaverse and digital twins. And so as somebody responsible for significant production spend, as many people are on the call and on either side, you start to see not only do these technologies apply to basically the way the procurement operates, but also to the spends that we buy. So we need, at the very least, we need to have an awareness so we can buy them better, as well as an ability to say, well, okay, how could they potentially apply to procurement and the converging supply chain as well? Okay, well, that was absolutely fantastic. A great 90 minutes. We didn't stop for a breath as we went through that session. There's some fantastic observations. Thanks again to the panelists and thanks again to the different solution providers that have given us all of the different predictions. We'll be compiling this all together and sharing it over the next week or so in predictions, and also the recording will be available as well. So yeah, once again, thanks very much, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lance.
Bye.